Ahoy, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. We are streaming from a new location this week, so I am not sure how it will work out, but I wanted to check in. Let me know what's going on. I just posted the tweet, so hopefully it'll take a little bit for y'all to trickle in here. How's your week, everyone? I have had kind of a rough week, but that is just a me thing. It's not necessarily reflective of any of the things that have actually been happening in my week. Now you can listen to me drink this water. No, I just had a lot of weird stuff going on, like inspiration-wise and motivation-wise. I feel like I work really productively for a couple of weeks, and then I inevitably crash and end up having a difficult time focusing or staying motivated. And this is one of those weeks where I kind of crashed towards the end of it. I had a tough time. But I managed to make it to the stream today, so I would like to try to get some work done. If you've not been to one of our world-building streams before, what we're going to work on today is mostly this dwarf campaign. Not mostly, it's entirely this dwarf campaign that I'm working on. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we brainstormed a bunch of cultural ideas and things for the dwarves. And then this week, we are going to talk about gods. We talked about some of them last week. I think we got most of the heavy lifting done last week. But we got a little bit more to clean up here. And then I thought maybe we could talk language a little bit if people were interested in that. So yeah, I'm just going to give you all a few minutes to trickle in. Hey, what's up, Vaughn? How you doing? Thanks for coming in, buddy. Yeah, I wasn't sure if we would get any people today just because we had to reschedule, right? Functionally cancel Dungeon Crawl this week because we had a player out. And we're on like the last session, maybe the penultimate session, depending on how fast it goes. But we'll have to see. But I thought maybe that when people weren't around, I had a tough time getting on Twitter today to remind anybody. So we'll see who shows up. I'm glad you're here, Vaughn. If nobody else shows up, it will still be a worthwhile stream in my mind. But we will just take a peek. What's going on with you today, sir? How is your week going, Vaughn? Let me start a new window. I just want to keep an eye on the YouTubes. Yeah, I apologize if I sound a little bit sick. I've been fighting a cold as well because, of course, you have to stack in all the nastiness at once, right? Motivation problems. Oh, ooh, opened up my YouTube, and then you could hear it, which is not what I wanted. Let me see. Looks like it might just be you right now, Vaughn. Hopefully Alan will show up in a little bit. But I can do some recap while we're waiting for more people to show up. No worries. Okay, so last week, let's look at our dwarf document. Last week, we did a lot of really good work, I thought, on brainstorming these various dwarven gods. So if you're not familiar with the setting, this is on Dune, which is the same setting as our current podcast. Oh, yeah, man, I hear ya. Fawn says he's been out and about having fun with the wife. I've been quite the sleepyhead. Yeah, dude, I slept in way too much. We play a late D&D game on Saturday nights, so I don't usually get home until 1 or 2. And then I'm just like absolutely demolished, and I have a tough time staying focused or waking up at a decent hour on Sundays. Sundays is like the one day I let myself sleep in a little bit. So I feel you there, dude. Great, but last week we did some work on our dwarven gods. If you're not too familiar with the setting, as I said, this is on Dune. This is where the podcast is set. And the way the Pantheon works in On Dune is that there are 6 deities, each one devoted to a different ability score. So we have the god of strength, and we have the god of dexterity, and we have the god of constitution. Yeah, wow, this is really messy. I should have gone through and cleaned this up. We have the god of constitution, we have the god of intelligence, we have the god of wisdom, and the god of charisma. But each different sort of race or culture on Undune interprets those 6 gods differently. So the humans kind of have their version of the 6 gods, and the elves have their version, the halflings have their version, and of course the dwarves have their version. And so while the dwarven or the elven god of strength is sort of a war god, a swordplay god, the dwarven god of strength is an artistry or a crafting or a forge god, a god of the anvil and hammer, right? Sort of that kind of an idea. So they have their own mythology for each one. It's kind of in the overview of the world tacitly acknowledged that none of them are exactly 100% accurate, quote unquote. The gods are very distant, so they don't really get involved in the affairs of mortals. So who's to say who's right and who's wrong? But because all these different interpretations exist, it's clear that somebody's right and somebody's wrong. Maybe they're all right. Who knows? But what it does is it reveals a lot of the cultural values, the mores and folkways, as Colville would say, about those individual cultures as to how they interpret these 6 gods. So We haven't named them yet in the Dwarven pantheon, but sort of in the base setting, they all have a short monosyllabic 3-letter name. So you have Bor and Hem and Moot and Oth, No, and Vis are your 6 different names of the 6 different gods. And so like the elven god of strength, for example, is Iboriel. So Bor is smuggled in there, even though the name itself is actually longer. And all the god interpretations have this kind of reoccurring motif. How does it sound? I have a window open here to keep it kind of from getting too hot, but I'm worried you're getting a lot of interference. Let me know if it sounds kind of messy in the background. So we have Hem, the dexterity god, and we have Moot, and so on and so forth. So let's go over real quick who these gods are. We can do kind of a light pass on them, and then we can talk about it in more specifics. Yeah, there's planes and stuff. I'm worried that's kind of noisy. I wonder if there's anything we can do to make it a little quieter. I will be right back, folks. I'm going to pull some of these windows in just so that way we don't hear so much background noise. 1 second. BRB. That should be a little better. And I am returned. Great. So Bor, we talked about a little bit in brief last week, is the god of strength and crafting and labor. The dwarves interpret their pantheon as a family, as a clan, which sort of betrays how important clans and family are to the dwarves. Are you doubling down on the 3-letter name so that Yogg doesn't stand out? Makes me wonder if Yogg has a longer name in Elvish. You know, it's possible. I kind of liked them all fitting in the same sort of a continuum. I didn't really think about it that way necessarily. I wanted something short, that way I could extend them out, but maybe the cultures do have different names for Yogg. I don't know. That's an interesting idea, Vaughn. But one thing that we talked about was the notion that the concept of Yogg in this campaign has kind of faded from public memory. It's a little bit like Sauron in Lord of the Rings, where people knew that there was an ancient enemy that was defeated a long time ago, but that enemy hasn't really reared its head in so many generations. People are kind of forgetting about it. The dwarves think about Yogg as being this elder evil that lives beneath the earth, but specifically who imprisoned it there and why has kind of fallen out of people's consciousness. So that's a good question as to whether Yogg would have different names in different cultures. I kind of like it staying primal like that, but it doesn't, I think especially as people's memory of it would warp and twist, it could be interesting to see their different cultural interpretations of what Yogg is or what it represented. Yeah, exactly, right? People think, oh, it's over, the gods imprisoned it, nobody dig too deep, the end. Great, so we have Bor, who's the Forge Father, the maker of chains. We talked about some of the myths that surround Bor. We talked about how Bor is the sort of husband figure to No, the goddess of the earth, and that No created the earth and sort of poured all of her soul and essence into it, and so now is the earth in a way that the other gods are not necessarily. They're more sort of corporeal or human. Bor is a craftsperson. Bor raised his son Oth, the god of intelligence, sort of incorrectly. Oth tried to be a creator, tried to please his father, but Bor was too much of a perfectionist, was never satisfied with anything that Oth made, and that kind of drove Oth away and made him become a craftsperson. Not craftsperson, a merchant, which is kind of considered to be a lower strata of Dwarven society. We talked a lot about Hem, who is the god of dexterity, the god of thieves, which we'll get into in a little bit, and his relationship to Bor, this famous myth about how Bor created something, basically the plagiarism myth, that Bor created something magnificent, and Hem stole it and claimed credit for it, and then Bor created something else and put a lock, like a door in front of the way, and then Hem picked the lock, got the thing, and claimed credit for it, so Bor made something, didn't tell anyone about it, and buried it under the earth. And the idea being that that is the prime Dwarven virtue, right? That to make something and to hide it is even better than making something and showing it to someone else. That, like, the best defense for your creation is secrecy. And so Alan, who was in the chat last week, had a really interesting idea about this notion of Bor's unseen creation having kind of a mythic or almost Buddhist place in Dwarven society that people talk about it. What was the thing that the boar made that no one ever saw? Where is it? And it's not a real thing, but it's this notion of, how glorious is the work unseen kind of a thing. It's like what you're aspiring towards. Every dwarf wants to make this masterpiece, but in showing anyone the masterpiece, it devalues it a little bit, right? Kind of like a magician in their trick. Talk about Bor and Moot, the god of warfare, a little bit. Then the relationship of husband and wife between Bor and No. We talked a lot about Hem, the god of thieves and locks. Yes, exactly. Vaughn, that was Jose's idea last week, I'm pretty sure, that Bor made Yogg's chains. There's a fun myth between Bor and Hem where the notion was that No, the goddess of the earth, made the prison, but it was Bor who made the lock or the key or the cage to contain Yogg inside of it. So there's a fun myth about, in order to test it and see if Yogg would be able to escape, they tricked Hem into going into the jail. And if Hem, the god of locks and of lockpickers, couldn't escape, then it must be safe. Hem is the god of thieves and of cheating and of plagiarism and of sort of fine manipulation. This is very much sort of anti-hero style figure in Dwarven mythology. This is considered unlucky. It's very akin to Loki, considered unlucky or considered dangerous to draw Hem's eye. Hem is sort of the god of laziness and shiftlessness and stealing from other people rather than making on your own. It's very much a foil to Bor. Nonetheless, they play an important part, especially in the mythology, but also even to average everyday dwarves. This was Alan's hit, but I really liked the notion that you might pray to Hem if you're doing something intricate. It's one thing to pray to Bor to craft this massive statue or to go mining and find something you might pray to. No. Are you thinking of borrowing the Ragnarok myth with the gods having an end and certain gods being on different sides? I'm not sure how the different pantheons feel about the end of the world, because I feel like if it's foretold, then the world might be a little bit more concerned about Yogg, because obviously it would involve Yogg in some way. I don't think I want to base the Dwarven mythology too much on Norse mythology, but that is an interesting idea. I'm not sure if the dwarves would be fatalistic in that way, in the way that the Norse are. It does make me wonder what they think about that maybe at some point Hem is like destined to let out whatever is buried beneath, and that's how they will end. It's kind of cool. It has sort of a dwarven feel to it, especially if you have a god in their pantheon that's kind of a trickster figure, which we don't really have in too many of the other pantheons so far. Lots of different rituals and prayers to Hem. Scraggly beards are considered a sign of Hem. Dwarves that will invoke to Hem when criticizing others' work, to poke holes, to find weaknesses, especially when they're sort of coming of age. There are no churches to Hem, but he's frequently winds up depicted in other shrines because he's in so many of the myths and things. All prayers to Hem are made in whispers, so I thought was really smart. I like the idea that you might quietly pray to Hem to help you with something, but in so doing, you need to be careful that you don't draw Hem's attention. A bunch of myths. Hem and Moot, the goddess of warfare, have an interesting relationship where he tried to trick her into, or he tried to convince her to go to bed with him. She wouldn't have it. She's sort of the chastity god, the Artemis god, the god of defense. And so there's kind of a back and forth in their mythology that's kind of interesting to me about how Hem essentially doesn't trick her into going to bed with him, but ends up tricking all the other gods into believing that she went to bed with him. Then we have Hem and Vis having kind of a fun relationship. That's the god of drinking and of merrymaking, the charisma god. We have Hem and Oth have kind of an uncle-nephew sort of relationship, that when Bor didn't raise Oth particularly well, Oth went to Hem and sort of persuaded Oth to become a merchant. Hem kind of has lots of different relationships. Yes, that's exactly right. Vaughn's got a really good hit there. There's Bor, a god that no one can ever live up to, whereas Hem is more approachable, since even he has to steal his ideas. Does Hem have a Prometheus-like vibe? Definitely, I think that's true. I think that could, if we do want to do the Ragnarok route, that could be an interesting way to play into that like that's Hem's ultimate crime, is that it ends up accidentally letting Yogg out. Although there is something kind of interesting about that being a mortal pursuit rather than the gods doing it, that dwarves delve too greedily and too deep. So that's the classic, right? So one of those two. But yeah, I think Bor, what's interesting about Bor too is that in the mythology as it stands right now, Bor has grown up, right? Bor has raised one kid sort of imperfectly and sees the error in their ways, or in his ways. And so then when he tries to raise Vis, who's the charisma god, it goes much better. The boar is a little bit more patient, a little bit more understanding. Where are we? I feel like I'm bopping around a lot. Where is Vis? Has another child. Yep, right here. Has a daughter. She watched the way Oth was treated and learned from it. She always is a joke or a wisecracker and frequently brings her father ale at the forge. The idea being that Vis is a little bit smarter, didn't try to impress Bor quite so much. Bor was a little bit more forgiving. So it's a lot about, growth and change and showing how you as a father figure can progress beyond your previous mistakes. Especially in Dwarven culture, because the father is sort of the one whose job it is to raise the child. That becomes really important to them mythologically. Great, and then we talked a little bit about Moot before we kind of got interrupted. So Moot is the goddess of warfare and armor and defense. There's stone, a lot of different potential names. There's Stone Maiden, Shield Maiden, Stone Sister, Shield Sister, Steadfastness, Defense, Preparedness, Chastity is a big one, Physical Endurance. Prayers and rituals include drills. Dwarves are all about evacuation and safety drills, and so running a drill might be considered a ritual to Moot. Reenactments, they're all about history and remembering. Feast days to Moot involve reliving ancient battles, although that could also be under Vis as well, because Vis is the god of sort of carousing. Calluses are seen as good and holy to Moot, but I could also see them being holy to Bor. But yeah, so Bor and Moot have a kind of a simple relationship. Bor makes things, Moot tests them. They have kind of a working relationship and professional respect. Hem and Moot have an antagonistic relationship, which we talked about before. And we didn't really get too much into the relationship that Moot has with the other three gods. So we might start there and touch up on that, and then we're going to see if we can hit Oth and No and Vis today as well. If we have time, which we might talk about language today as well, because that's one thing I have been hesitant to do is name any of these gods quite yet, because I don't really know how the Dwarven language works, and I want that to work in concert with it. Great. So we are going to dive into that. I'm just going to check YouTube again really quick. Make sure we're muted. Yep. And see how we're doing for viewership. I think it still might just be you. Oh, 2 people watching now. Okay. Oof, you ever one of those days where you're just like extremely thirsty and no amount of water can possibly sate you? I'm having one of those today. Okay, great. So what do we have? Let's talk about Moot. We have a lot of drills and things and portfolio ideas here. Let's talk about more myths. So we have Bor's relationship with Moot, and we have Hem's relationship with Moot. So what is Oth's relationship to Moot, if they have one? They don't necessarily have to have them for every single one, but I feel like it's important to establish some of them. So this is... Yeah, because at this point, if Moot is No's sister, then they're like one step removed almost from the from Oth as like a child, right, or as a family member. So Moot, I don't know that Moot necessarily has a relationship with Hem. Let's maybe start with Moot and No, because No is her sister. Oh, Vaughn's got an idea. What if there was once a siege that required a clan of dwarves to endure and fast for some time? Maybe they had a Ramadan-like fasting time in remembrance. Oh, that's cool. Fasting. That's neat. Fasting. In remembrance. I was thinking, I've been rereading Game of Thrones, the first one, of the Siege of Storm's End kind of a thing, right? Where Stannis has to endure forever. Or dwarves were forced to endure for months on little to no food. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. Fasting is a big thing for her. Moot and No are sisters. I think that No is the older sister. I think there's something kind of young that Moot sort of represents a certain degree of innocence on some level. Alan floated the idea that she was mute, which I kind of think is interesting, especially if we're all about like secrecy with dwarves. That like what better secret could there possibly be than Moot not speaking, or they never speaking, right? I'm hesitant to put that here because I feel like a lot of other gods, a lot of different interpretations of Moot are going to fall on, because it seems like obvious to do Moot and mute, but I wonder if this is the best place to put it. One thing I like about it is that it helps set up the Hem myth that like Hem makes 3 different attempts to try to sleep with Moot, and Moot rebuffs Hem every single time, and then the final time Ham just goes around telling people that they slept together, but Moot, being mute, can't deny it, right? Which I think that's interesting as a concept. So that's like one point in favor of that, of Moot being mute. Let me put that up. Let me just put it in here. Then the question then becomes like, how did Moot lose their voice? Lose their voice. Germanic stuff is like getting the tongue cut out. That's not very mythic. Usually it's that they trade it away or they make some deal or something, right? I'm thinking about Odin and his eye. Or I'm thinking about even Ariel, right? And her voice. But I think that's cool. I think that's... Yeah, she took a vow of silence is pretty good. She took a vow of silence. But why? Did something happen? I mean, it could just be like part of her personality that Moot never speaks, as opposed to, oh, maybe she saw the secret creation of Bor and made the vow to never speak of it. That's kind of cool, because especially if they have this relationship where Moot like field tests everything that Bor made. Yeah, I can see that. I think weaving all these myths together is really interesting, because like that's not really how myths work in actual mythology, right? Like the myths tend to be really like disjointed, but I think because we're making them out of whole cloth, we can interweave them in almost a like MCU continuity web kind of way that you can't really find in the old traditional myths. That's kind of neat. Did she see Bor's... A good idea, Vaughn. Bor's secret creation. She could, yep. Did she see Bor's secret creation and was then sworn to secrecy? Did she see / did she test? / test Bor's secret creation and was then sworn to secrecy. That's cool. Hey, Alan, thanks for showing up, dude. Just me and Vaughn right now. Thanks for swinging in. Yeah, we're talking about Moot, buddy, and we're talking about some myths. We decided to take your idea that Moot is silent. And we were talking about why Moot might have lost their voice. And it was Vaughn's good idea to have her, just us 3 boys. It was Vaughn's idea for her to lose her voice because she saw Bor's secret creation and was then sworn to secrecy, which I thought was kind of cool. Yeah, that's all good. We're trying to talk a little bit about Moot and No and their relationship. I like the notion that Moot is the younger sister of No. And if No sort of sacrificed themselves to create the earth. Yeah, it is good, right? Nice work, Vaughn. That if No sort of sacrificed her quote-unquote corporeal body to make the earth, then what kind of relationship do they have? I mean, No is wisdom. Oth is intelligence. Yeah, Oth is the god of wealth and coins and trade, and No is the god of the earth, stone, mining, precious gems. Yes, indeed. No worries, bud. So, like, if Moot is the god of doors and hidden fortresses and things, it seems like there isn't no connection between No and Moot, but what is it, right? Like, they're sisters. How do they get along? I feel like they get along okay. Moot lets her tests do the talking, so if something passes, she is pleased. If something fails, she is displeased. It's kind of cool. Because there's a lot of drills, right, that we talked about. Yeah, like we'd go up to like something about a defeat or a breach is seen as a curse from Moot. You have lost her favor. Her favor if you have not fortified or tested your stronghold enough. And I think that the testing and like constantly sort of probing at the defenses is an important part of who Moot is, that you can't really be prepared unless you are very aware of all the aspects of your sort of defensive strategy. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, boy, I can't figure out Moot and No. Maybe we'll come back to it But we couldn't think of anything for Moot and Oth either. It's kind of tough if the character doesn't speak. What are their relationships to these other people? We had established there was some kind of relationship between Moot and Vis with the reenactments, right? That Vis is very much about history and remembrance and drinking, and that Moot is also kind of about drills and safeties. I had vows to Moot's domain. Yeah, vows. I guess, yeah, that's true if she, specifically swore to be silent, right? That's kind of neat. That you would, you would swear to Moot in order to, make an unbreakable. Yeah, that's kind of neat. I like that if it's about being unbreakable, right? And Dwarven vows are considered unbreakable. What's up, Jose? Hey, dude, I have not had a chance to listen to the Kalevala stuff you sent me, but thank you for putting that in the Discord. I just saw it today, and I was like, oh, crap, I haven't sat down and listened to this yet, but I will. Does Moot write? I feel like we talked about this a little bit, where Moot, or writing for dwarves is kind of a new idea. I think we had said that they, had invented writing, that they mostly use pictographs, right? In their art. They use sculpture and stuff rather than actual text. And that text only got invented for commerce. And so I feel like Oth is probably the god of writing, whereas Moot feels like he's not quite there. Yeah, dude, I think it's going to be cool, though. I don't know if she, communicates in that way at all, She's because they're not very corporeal, these gods. They are in some sense, but, nobody ever sees them. So I think it's all about, the whole point is she doesn't really communicate with you. She's about defense and silence and impenetrability. I don't know. She could sign, but I feel like that's already communicating more than she wants to. She's secretive and silent, and as unrelenting as stone. Whereas I feel like No, we can get into this in a little bit. No also doesn't really speak, but I think No is sort of the god of forethought on some level, right? And insight, and knowing exactly when you would need what. I think Vaughn, success and failure are her only communications. I don't think she reaches out to her followers. I think she's kind of like a flinty, Stannis Baratheon god, right? Where it's the hard rule and the law and unbreakable. Maybe she's something about the lawkeeper or something like that. Lawkeeper. In charge of Dwarven customs and justice. I still pray to Moot in a Tai Chi kind of way. Does a warrior speak or talk? Maybe that's considered a high honor to Moot is to take a vow of silence. Vow of silence. Dwarven justice and laws. Which that's another conversation we should have at some point. What does Dwarven punishment look like? What is Dwarven justice? I think No is kind. Is kind and generous and, knowing, obviously. I think Moot is cold and unfriendly and unrelenting. You think that No is better as lawkeeper? She's so much about the earth. I think we can come back to it. I think that No is a very ephemeral god in the sense that she's not present in Dwarven life except when you're underground. Dwarven custom seems very outside of her realm. No, but again, we could totally get there when we get there. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Unrelenting and headstrong. Yeah. But it seems she doesn't. Maybe her whole point is that she does not have relationships to too many other gods, right? That she doesn't. She loves her sister, but they don't speak and don't communicate much. They're kind of estranged. That's true. Hard to imagine mute lawyers. That's a good point. Well, I don't think everyone who worships Moot is mute. I just think Moot is mute. I think that the god is the silent, unspeaking god. That the law speaks for itself, right? There's no interpretation on the law. The law is the law, right? There's no reason to argue it. It's just did you do this or did you not do this? And obviously, I think that's where the conflict comes in, right? That the law is iron and it's not meant to be interpreted, but obviously sometimes it has to be interpreted. So I don't know. I think there could be some interesting dissonance there between what the dwarves want and what the dwarves actually do. But we can see. I'm open to either idea. Exactly. Their word would truly be their bond. Precisely. That it's all about the vows, right? But they don't speak. They aren't. They don't. I think it's value in creation, but not necessarily in law, right? And I don't necessarily see law and critique as being the same thing. But again, I think the whole point here is that these are contrasting values, that they don't all knit together perfectly. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Where was I? They don't speak, they don't see eye to eye, but there is a healthy respect. I think that's okay. I'm not like super interested in it. Mood is cold and unfriendly to the other gods. She views Vis as unserious and Oth as dangerous. Yeah, I like that. That if Oth is the god, as Oth is the god of outsiders and commerce and the wider world, Moot sees Oth as inviting trouble, right? If Moot is all about sealing up the doors and refusing to let anyone inside, the notion of trading or communicating with the outside world at all seems very dangerous to Moot. I feel like Moot kind of disapproves and would warn against that if Moot could speak. Yeah, I think that's cool. Dark and secretive. I'm into it. That seems cool. I'm trying to think there's other stuff from Moot. We can solve the law thing if you want. So to me, No is all about the earth and the gifts of the earth, and like mythologically, the notion being that No created the earth, like created the crust or whatever, and all the mountains and all the landscape and all the terrain as a prison for Yogg, and in so doing, like put veins of ore. Yeah, exactly. Vaughn, that's perfect. Needing to trade is admitting you weren't prepared and needed someone else's help, and you should be entirely self-sufficient. Yeah, that's really good. As inviting trouble. I'm going to put that in quotes. Trade is, yep, an admission that you weren't prepared and needed someone else's help. Yep. It's all about self-sufficiency. Yeah, laws are interesting because, like, the dwarves feel very lawful, and I really want to, like... I feel like in a lot of settings, dwarves get sort of painted as being chaotic, you know, sort of the boisterous drinking and the laughing and stuff, and elves get sort of painted as being prissy and full of culture and with sticks up their butts. And that's definitely true of some of my elves in Undude, like the wood elves in particular are a little bit prissy and lawful. But I think dwarves, I would like to try to embrace sort of chaotic elves and lawful dwarves in the way that it was originally intended. So they seem lawful, but the question is, shouldn't she be the patron of rivers? She flows around, no. As a warrior, she would have to be fluid, but with purpose. I don't think she's fluid at all, though. You know, Oth or Vis feels like the patron of rivers because it's about change or flowing. Whereas Moot is about staying still, right? Moot is the god, in that case, the god of the dam, the god of, like, putting something in the way to stop change. It's an interesting idea, the notion of like, you know, a god of change, a god of river, a god of and that's somewhat Hem, I think. I don't know. I just feel like she's so stationary. Like, of any of the gods, she's the god of, like, staying place. But yeah, like, laws are they Byzantine? Are they, like, really simple? Are they, yeah, an underground lake or cistern? I could see that. That's stationary and solid and doesn't move. Oh, I think we'll come back to it. Let's talk about Oth. So Oth is the god of intelligence, the god of wealth, coins, and trade. Sorry. So thirsty. Such talking. Let's see. So I want to copy the format here. We have myths, symbols, prayers and rituals, portfolio. When I think of laws, I think about argumentation around a few steady pillars, sort of like the criticism conventions that are established for art above. I could see that. So that kind of sounds like wisdom to me on some level. But I feel like, yeah, that's very earthly. It's very like cultural rather than about the earth itself. So I'm not sure how much that would fall under. No, but I like that. I think that they would have like a handful of like edicts or like pillars, as you describe, these like bulwarks or bastions of dwarven law and logic. Off is the Ferengi. Yeah, I mean, basically. The problem with the Ferengis is that like they really lean into all the like negative Jewish stereotypes that sometimes dwarves get painted with. You have to be kind of careful there. But I think Ferengi is a good touchstone for sure. They pray to him by giving him money. We made this point that he is... Oh, did I delete it? Because I really liked that bit about how he loves the sky and loves human culture. Exclusive rights. Yeah, I think there's a lot of commerce stuff here. I like coin counter. I think that, like, yes, he's the god of trade and coin and wealth. I think that he's, like, most of the god of accounting, right? And, like, records and things like that. And hoarding wealth. That, like, if any god is going to fall into the sort of greed trap, it's going to be Oth. So accounting, trade. I think he's kind of the diplomacy god on some level. Wealth, commerce, we kind of have under trade. Greed, writing. Oh, that's crazy. Ferengi is the Saracen word for Frankish. That's a great word, Ferengi. I wonder why they picked it. They just thought it sounded cool. I didn't know that. The more you know. Yeah, I get it. That's cool. Accounting, trade, diplomacy, wealth, greed, writing, like hoarding, I guess that's kind of in there. Like other, like, yeah, we have diplomacy, it's like other, like relations with other races. That feels like a pretty good portfolio. We can always add stuff. So yeah, like sacrifices include like donations and monetary gifts. I'm trying to think. So I think he invented runes, and he invented the sort of language for writing down, accounts and things like that. How did we talk about this before? Because Vaughn, way back in the day, had a cool idea about, because Tolkien Dwarvish is all secret. Yeah. Piggy banks. So script. Runes, Dwarven writing is very different from spoken Dwarven. Written Dwarven is runic, but largely mathematical, or used for engineering and architecture. It's also used for accounting and trade. So I think it's like, yeah, he's also the god of like numbers and mathematics. And I think that like on some level, like if you think about his relationship with Bor, that Bor is sort of the god of labor and experimentation and inspiration. The dwarves believe that like it's sort of muscle memory. It's like the god speaking through your body, whereas Oth is a lot about pre-planning. I mean, Mood is on some level too, but Oth is the god of engineering and of like diagrams and things like that. That Oth thinks things out in the way that Bor just sort of like does, right? For Bor, it's about acting on instinct and on gut. Geometry, yeah, definitely geometry is cool. I think a lot of that comes to Oth. Like that's what Oth brought in their own way. But they were sort of fell in love with the world outside the mountains and with coin and with wealth and accumulating more wealth. Yeah, he's the god of patents. Hey, David, thanks for coming. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, right. For sure. And that's the distinction. Like, for Bor, trial and error is a big thing. Like, you make it and it doesn't quite work, so you scrap it and you make it again. Oth would have plotted it all out and made sure you never have to make it again. But that's kind of considered cheating, I think, in Dwarven society, right? Sometimes it's necessary. If you just start from scratch, you could end up with a disaster or an accident or something like that. If you haven't, like, calculated, which stone is going to bear how much weight and how many pillars should go in this hall, but that's considered kind of tacky, right? You want to do that out of the public eye. You want to give the impression that you just knew how many pillars there should be, and blah 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 blah. And to a human structure, that seems very simple to a dwarf. A dwarf could look at a human building and be like, oh, this is child's play. But since dwarven work and dwarven construction is so much more advanced, you do need to do some mathematics and some plotting, and that all kind of falls under Oth. Drawing, like sacred geometry kind of a thing. Sacred geometry. Certain shapes and designs have certain divine value. I think sacred value is fine. Value to Oth. Let's see. Engineers, architects, and accountants only work at night. Yeah. That's kind of interesting. I feel like he's all about the sun, though, and he's all about going out in the world. But I see what you're saying. You're saying that like you don't want anyone to see that you've done this, so you do it when everyone is asleep. Yeah. What do dwarves think about night and day? You know, do they practice it? Like, if you live underground, you know, I know that like Moria has a lot of essentially skylights, like lights that look out onto the mountain, and they get a lot of their light naturally. So they might still function with a day and night system. But they also talk about in the Song of Durin, they talk about the sand geometrics mandalas. Oh, I have seen it. It's been a long time. Cool, Vaughn. I'll see you in a bit. Boy, I don't really remember it. It's in the beginning, right? With the elders or whatever. Okay. Prayers and rituals, donations, writings. You know, basic stuff. Symbols are coins, runes, geometry. I don't remember. Can you contextualize it for dwarves, Jose? Because it's been a long time since I've seen it. Runes, coins, geometry, other symbols, like ink, I guess, quills, right? What do they write with? Chisel, maybe? Chisel and stone. Let's get the myths down that we already have. So we have a myth with him and Boar, obviously, kind of the main myth. Crystals are angular, predictable patterns, high value. Yeah. Let's put crystals in there. So yeah, in Song of Durin, they talk about how they have these like crystal lamps. They just glow forever. I think there's something with it. The dwarves have some equivalent of that. So we could maybe talk about the idea that they don't like observe day and night in the way that humans do or elves do, right? They don't really care about the sun and the moon. Obviously, I think that mythologically, Oth loves the sky and loves human culture and cities and language. Okay. And then, what else? Hem is the corrupting influence on Oth. This is a nice thing about doing the gods in this order is that like then a lot of the myths get kind of filled out for you without having to like actually rewrite them, you know, because we determine all of Hem's relationships. That means we have most of Oth's relationships, right? Things like that. And then Moot views Oth is kind of dangerous. Okay, cool. So what is Oth's relationship to No? I think that No, again, is also kind of silent, but I think No speaks in like signs and things like that. We'll get into this later. No is kind to Oth. Like No knew that Oth wouldn't please his father, knew how Boar would react, but had him anyway. No knew how vital cooperation with the other races would be, how vital trade and cooperation of the races would be, and so anticipated Oh, yeah, like Fibonacci. It's kind of cool. No one knew how vital trade and cooperation with the other races would be, and so anticipated the need. So anticipated that the dwarves would need trade. That, like, that's kind of cool. Drawing mandalas and geometry. I mean, it's kind of under sticker geometry. Mandalas and sand. I don't know if they have a lot of sand, but I guess they could have it. They could make it, right? Gravel or whatever. So one thing we'll talk about when we get into No is the notion that, like, No foresaw everything, right? This is kind of how I ran the Dwarven God in my previous world, in my 4th edition campaign, was this notion that the god, like, set everything up and then was completely stepped away. And, like, that's sort of true here with Dune, but the notion that, like, No anticipated every single need and crisis that the dwarves would have and prepared them for it. So one of the reasons the Seven Sorrows are kind of considered so terrifying and so destructive is that No doesn't seem to have accounted for it. Maybe it was a part of No's grand plan, right, that the dwarves would be exiled and come back, but for hundreds of years people thought that No had abandoned them. This was No's intention, was to exile them like this, and how dare they do that. But, like, if the dwarves find a vein of silver, then they were meant to find that vein of silver at that particular time, right? The god of wisdom had the foresight to see everything, and so made this one perfect creation, the earth, that accounted for every possible thought and contingency that the dwarves would have. So anytime that it feels like you are, the deck is stacked against you, or you're you're kind of backed into a corner, well, that's all part of No's plan. It's supposed to be that way for now, but later it will go whatever, which is a very Christian idea, I think. But I feel like that really plays into the god of knowledge, the god of wisdom. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So this notion then being that, like, No is kind to Oth and understands Oth's value in a way that Bor doesn't. Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also just like a way to rationalize any dwarf getting out of a situation. It's like, oh, well, No intended this, right? This was always No's plan. And I think it pertains a little bit more to the earth than it does to just, like, general life. Like, humans can act against the will of No. Non-dwarves can act against the will of No. And even a dwarf, I think, could. But the notion is that No knew everything and anticipated everything in advance. They're sort of omniscient rather than omnipotent. So I think you still have the free will to go against what No wanted for you, but maybe No knew that and accounted for it. Great. So if you meet a bad end, then if there's a cave-in, it's like, well, you didn't play into No's plan. Okay. So then Oth and Vis have kind of a rivalry. Talked about. Have a rivalry. Oth is, oh yeah, sure, this is good, is somewhat jealous of Vis because Vis gets along with their father. From this springs the myths about jealousy. Oth wants what Vis effortlessly has, and so schemes to hoard wealth and gold to impress his father, but of course it never works. But of course it never works. If Oth is all about gold and covetousness and greed, then it makes sense that it's like things will never patch that hole. The thing Oth really wants is the approval of their father, and they never get it, right? And that's kind of what furthers this idea. Oh, there's like a water fountain right around the corner. I might go get some more water. I'm getting a little light. So thirsty. But I think that's cool. I'm trying to think if there's like a good myth about Oth. About like, what's the anti-greed myth? What's the... is it pro-greed or anti-greed? Who would appreciate of Oth since she takes Bor's wrath away from him? Yeah, it could be, but I feel like Vis is the whole thing is that everybody likes them, I guess. But I think we need, if it's not there, then I think we need greed and jealousy somewhere in Oth, right? Like I think that's a core value to dwarves. If we go up to the values, greed. Dwarves covet wealth. It is their greatest ambition that their wealth be spent upon the betterment of the clan, its beauty, its defense, its legacy, at the danger of gathering wealth. Some of the bowels of the earth is that it appears bottomless, and so too is a dwarf's hunger to dig deeper, to uncover more. Greed is as virulent as disease among dwarven kind. It creeps insidiously upon even the most well-meaning of dwarves, and none are immune to its grasp. Societal pressure often prevents the most miserly of actions, but every dwarf could, if pressed, betray a sizable trove of treasure they've squirreled away somewhere far from prying eyes. Not all greed is bound to mere gold, however. Simple envy is near the heart of every dwarf. Can drive a dwarf mad with jealousy. Some even find a silver lining to this envy. It can be a powerful motivating factor. As often as not, it leads the dwarf on a path to plagiarism, a crime most serious in their creator culture. The thing Oth has acquired and ended up owning Oth is unavailable to leverage their mind in some special defense because they've been keeping their own accounts. So distracted by wealth, Oth lets everybody down. I like that. I don't know what the application of it is 100%. I like that the possessions possess you kind of a thing. Oth became so concerned with acquiring more wealth that they were unable to focus on something else. The question is what? Oth became so focused on acquiring more wealth. Yeah, definitely an anti-greed myth. That it distracted him from something he was meant to do. Is there something the dwarves lost to humans or something like that, or to other races that now they use as this is why you can't trust elves? Vaughn asks, how Game of Thrones are dwarven clans? Do they vie to kill, steal, / overthrow one another? They do, all the time. Dwarven, it's less like backstabbing, although that's definitely a factor. One thing we talked about before is that dwarves have incredible knowledge of history and suspicion. So there's this. Dwarves trust no one. A certain degree of skepticism is considered natural and healthy. You're supposed to trust the dwarves inside your own clan and not anyone else, including other clans. But this is rarely ever the case, for a dwarf is thoroughly suspicious all the way to his core. It is often those he knows best, those of his clan, that he doubts the most. In their darkest moods, the one person a dwarf feels they can trust is themselves. Bitter irony, since this paranoia twists their perceptions and makes them quite untrustworthy. In addition, we talk about they're therefore obsessed with their own history and traditions. All dwarven poetry is pure history, blah, blah, blah. A dwarf's memory is deep and profound. Their grudges are legendary. There is no dwarven clan not feuding in a centuries-long Cold War with a rival clan. Time heals no wounds. So I don't necessarily know if they constantly try to overthrow one another, but they do get into these epic Greek-style blood feuds. Dwarves have trouble feeding themselves. Often never pay attention to agriculture, only to gold. Could explain why they're so short and stumpy. It's kind of interesting. Dwarves would hate the humans since they know how to merge metals and alloys. Does magic make for a good secret knowledge that the dwarves could feel was there? I was going to say, magic is the other thing we haven't really talked about. What are dwarves' relationships to arcane magic? Because normally that's kind of the providence of the intelligence god. The elven god of intelligence is specifically sort of the Corlon Lorathian style god of magic, Aranath. So I wonder if it's that he sold it, right? He sold something really valuable. He traded away something that shouldn't have been traded. I mean, could it be language? Did he give writing away? Did he give magic? I mean, I think you can have both things. I think that you can still have him have hoarded so much that it ended up, he fell back on something. He sold agriculture. He could. I mean, the problem with that is the dwarves wouldn't know how to grow things anyway. That if you're underground, there's not a lot of crops that would survive down there. He gave math away. It's interesting. I think it would have to be something that they don't have anymore. That they sold a thing and they lost it. So if they still have math, I mean, it's definitely in his wheelhouse that it could be math. Food or... So food we talked about. Let me put this down. So alternatively, or at the same time, Oth sold something. Yeah. That's some art, some softer humanizing idea. Yeah, exactly. I think it's cool if it's abstract. That he gave away kindness or trust or whatever. He sold it for silver. Yeah, that's so good. Oth sold something vital to Dwarven kind. Something they lack now. Because Oth. Trust is good. We like trust. Because Oth wanted silver. I mean, his thing is trust, right? He's the god of trusting mortals, but I guess greed and trust don't really go along. Trust. That's cool. I like that it's abstract. Let's brainstorm a few more. I think something with magic is cool. I think math is interesting. Math. Magic. Because they don't seem to have much of a tradition of arcane magic whatsoever. Like, not that they couldn't have wizards, I guess, but they're all about that wisdom, Compassion. It's something like that, yeah, for sure. We don't have to necessarily decide what it is right now. We can keep brainstorming, but I think that's solid. The question is then, do we still need this one? What's up, Jose? Jose always does this thing where he freaks out in one message. He's like, oh! And then and then in his second message it says, communication magic, what do you mean? They gave away the ability to forget. That's interesting. That's kind of in Vis's wheelhouse, but that's strong. To forgive. They gave away forgiveness, maybe? He gave away something that let the dwarves communicate with no. The elementals? So, like, now they don't have elementals? The ability to forget. Let's talk about elementals when we get to know. I think that is cool, though, Jose. Because you could tie that, if we do go with the ability to forget, like forgetfulness, we could tie that into Vis, right? That, like, he sold something of hers. That if her thing is about cosmic bean counter trading away an entire people's capacity to forget is pretty juicy. What's the fallout of that? So if they gave up something that allows them to forget, other communities can communicate with elementals in some way with no, but they can't. They can interpret, but not really talk. Can you elaborate on that, Alan? You ran up against the Christian anti-Semitic vibes. Because, like, this is, I mean, I think Oth already kind of has that problem, right? That, like, it's the coin counter character. I do like the grudges live forever thing. I think, Jose, if we did do something with the elementals, that it would be that, like, only dwarves had the power to make elementals, or earth elementals, and they gave up that. But that feels too specific and not mythic enough, right? There's maybe something to that idea, but I don't know if it's, like, in the myth, because I feel like that's... This is kind of taking that idea, Jose. Did they give up, like, the secret of mining? Did they... Because, like, humans mine, too, right, now. Did they give up that? Like, did they sell out the locations of ores and precious gems in the earth? I like the grudges thing, though, that, like, they gave up their ability to forget, so now they remember all things for good or for ill, right? How does that interact with Vis, the god of drinking? Because what we talk about with Dwarven drinking is that drinking helps them remember, right? Straight out of Mordenkainen's, which I really thought was cool. But it's in history, I think. Alcohol holds a special place in Dwarven society. Rather than making them forget, ale causes dwarves to remember, to access the racial memory of their people. A dwarf who drinks alone, however, is likely to dwell on shameful rather than glorious thoughts of the past. Oh yeah, I hear you. The forgiveness thing is super Christian. A race of people whose fatal flaws they traded their ability to forgive for silver. Early Christians blamed the Jews for Christ's death. Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's still basically the same. I think we can come back to it. I think what's important is that Oth sold something valuable, whether that's elementals or whether that's forgetfulness. I think it's good, but that is the one thing I'm worried about, is getting a little yucky in terms of like unintentionally saying something. God diplomacy, the forgive and forget thing that people do, it makes dwarves able to forgive without forgetting. Yeah, maybe gave up the knowledge of like a special alloy. I could see that. Like mythical weapons of old are made out of some unattainable. That's like that's like a pretty tangible one, and it could be adamant or something like that, right? That's kind of cool. So flip it and say that they traded away memory and now must work to remember things. Oh, that's kind of cool. But do they have to work? Like, they drink to remember, so I guess they kind of do. But if dwarves remember everything, and that's something we've talked about, right? Like, time heals no wounds. I almost think that, like, booze functions as, like, a hallucinogenic. Like, it lets them relive rather than just remember. So, I don't know. I think it's good. I think that he sold their ability to forgetfulness, for silver, and gave it to humans. And now humans have it, right? And that's why they are so flighty and sort of short-lived. Like, I think that's good, even if it's maybe a little sticky, because I don't see that immediate parallel. I guess I wouldn't. But that's the one I like the most right now. I think you definitely could do something more tangible, like a fancy medal or something like that, right? Alan says the fix could be that they traded away their written language. So history is like a game of telephone, requires upkeep, prone to distortion over time. That's definitely there. Dwarves don't sleep. That's funny. Kind of an elf thing, though, right? With trancing or Eladrin. The fix could be that they traded away their written language. So history is like a game of telephone, requires upkeep, prone to distortion over time. That's kind of cool. It would change what we have with our language. And there are definitely things dwarves have forgotten about. He sold his beard. Oh, no. I mean, it's something that's kind of interesting. I think the forgetfulness is really good. I think that's the one I like the most. I think the writing could work. I think that the conceit of him giving it up, especially if you think of like him trading away something, that now that explains not only why the dwarves don't have something, but why humans have it too now, right? That like if he sold forgiving, or if he sold like a forgiveness to the dwarves, to the humans. See, I don't see. I mean, I'm not trying to like. If it's anti-Semitic, it's anti-Semitic, but I don't necessarily see how that is, because if the conceit is that like Christians never forgave Jews for killing Jesus, which I don't think is true, but if that's the toxic, underpinning, the like in this example, the Jewish analog, the dwarves, are the ones who are unable to forgive, where the humans, the Christian analog, are able to forgive, right? If that's what we're worried about, I think that this goes around that. Maybe I'm dense, but like sold spoken language, they still have math. Gave away one of Noah's true names. That's why humans can work the earth or do elements. I think that's something interesting there. Yeah, I think it's forgetfulness, guy. I think these are all great ideas, by the way. Please don't interpret this as me thinking your ideas are not good. I think the no thing could totally work. I think that like the forgetfulness could. I mean, it could even be multiple things. Right? It could be that like Oth traded something important, and then that allowed humans to start to mine the earth, and then Oth traded something else, and such, and then the final thing Oth traded was dwarves' forgetfulness, and that's when he was sort of stopped, right? Like you could have it be kind of like the Hem myth, be like multiple things that Oth sold. I think it's the forgetfulness. I think that explains the most out of it. I think that's what it is. I'm going to bold it, but again, I think a lot of these could work. I think there's something with the writing, right? Oh, what if you do this? What if you say that, like, Oth purchased from humans, purchased writing? Like, Oth sold a bunch of stuff, yes, but Oth bought writing. That, like, in order to take accounts, right? Yeah, somebody could have made a promise that if this happens again, you're ostracized or whatever. That, like, writing is a human invention. And Oth purchased it from them. As such, other dwarves view runes with suspicion. What I like about that is it, like, it works with dwarves, but it also plays into this idea of, like, how actual Vikings thought about runes. Not that the dwarves are Vikings, but there's obviously some Norse touchstones. I mean, they originate in Norse mythology, but runes were seen as being dangerous because if you couldn't read runes, you didn't know what spells they contained. So I feel like there's a dwarven superstition about written words, that it's okay to speak words, but to write them down, because you can't necessarily read them, or you won't know until you say them out loud what they mean, that there's this sense of they could be hiding hidden spells, right? Or hidden enchantments. That they view them as being sold for silver as a toxic trigger phrase. Shit. Yeah. If it is, then I definitely don't want to use that. Let me look it up. Phrase. Because that means that, like, no matter what we do, right, we can't do this idea. No matter what he sold, if that's yucky, then I don't want to do it. Well, you know what? Let's move on. I think that this is... I'm not seeing it come up as being specifically anti-Semitic. He could have sold it for Mithril. Yeah, that's true. Or gold, right? Like, I think it's something like that, you know, whether he traded it or whatever. Maybe he traded forgetfulness for writing, you know, something like that. There might be a trade involved, something along those lines. But I think it's something like that. We can hammer it out, but a little bit more specifically later. We got a couple more gods we should do, so I kind of want to move on. But I think Oth is pretty well fleshed out as far as I'm concerned, right? Yeah. Feel free, if you have more Oth ideas, feel free to throw them out there. Wanted wealth rather than silver. If Oth, making it transitory. Yeah, that's cool. If Oth trades again, he will face consequences from the dwarves, from the dwarven gods. Okay. Let's talk about no. Yeah, I saw the 30 pieces of silver. Yeah. God, that's such a weird... Like, I understand why... This is a whole different topic, but the notion of saying that, like, that Judas... That's considered, like, an act that the Jewish people undertook when, like... Listen, they were all Jewish. Like, Jesus was Jewish. You know what I mean? The notion of, like, that's something that the Jews did. I guess because of the Pharisees or whatever. I was raised Catholic. But, like, that's A, like, a misunderstanding of what the text is about, and B, like, narrow-sighted, and that's yucky. I don't like that. I don't like that that's what we've taken away from that story, is that Jewish people would do that. Because they wouldn't, and that's terrible. But you can't reason with racism. It's just racist. Yes, cool. Let's talk about that. Perfect, Jose. I love that. No talks and visions in Tremors. Oh, yeah. Earthquake as sign. Like, that's excellent. Tremors have special... right now we're talking about the film with the worms, right? We're not talking about actual Tremors. We're talking about the worms. Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right, Vaughn. So let's talk about the Earth Goddess instead, because that's way cooler. Significance to... dwarves, specifically followers of no. Followers of no. Okay, cool. I love that, Jose. That's excellent. She's the patron of psychic, and she's... Oh, that's terrible. Your wealth is divvied up by the state. Terrible. A place to bury strangers. God. Weird. That is some weird Bible trivia. She's the patron of psychic or of seers. I don't know about psychics, but definitely seers and prophets and things. Vibrations. She's the goddess of vibrators. So yes, Jose. Boom, you're right onto it. So one thing I wanted to talk about is that I think that the Dwarven culture has two primary forms of music. I mean, they might have more, but there's two that I can think of right now, and they're each related to two different of the different gods. So there is a dirge or an epic poem. I think they basically have like the Dwarven equivalent of like Beowulf, but it is essentially just a full record of Dwarven history, and it is epic poetry, and it is meant to be sung, and it is specifically meant to be sung at the forge. We talked about this a little bit, but it has this like boom, boom, boom meter, and for that I want to look into the Kalevala. But I also like the idea that that's sort of the song to the father, right? This is the song about the things we have made and all the great deeds of the dwarves and the great tragedies and things. And it's impossibly long, and certain dwarves might only know certain parts of it. Maybe one dwarf somewhere knows the whole thing. But it's sung at the hall and it's sung at the forge. And when it's sung at the hall, you bang the tankards on the table to get that rhythm. Like you need that sort of boom, boom, boom. And it otherwise has no other accompaniment. Maybe it has a drum. Right, if you don't have a forge or a table, but that's like one of the big monomyth. I want to use that throughout the campaign. I want to have that be like the big piece of culture or art in Dwarven society. But then the other one is I think that they have like the opposite of that, where the Dwarven, the Song of the Forge is like very rigid and very like interpretively you can't do a lot with it. Right, it's just like how much do you know, how much have you memorized. I think that. I read a really interesting article at one time that talked about how if you look at the musical traditions of sort of like the East and the West, specifically looking at like Europe and the Middle East, which I guess is North and South, but you understand what I'm saying. The sort of Western music is all about uniformity, and it's all about like choirs singing together and harmonizing and multiple different like strains, like people all singing at once. Whereas if you look at Eastern music, or specifically Middle Eastern music, it's all about individuality, and it's about like lone singers and soloists and stuff like that is very, very common, especially if you think about like the mujahideen or whatever. Oh, what is the word? Muezzin, the like call to prayer, is one voice singing out across the city. And so I like the idea that No's music almost has like a Welsh choir kind of a vibe, like a mining choir, where it's wordless and it doesn't recount anything but except emotion. It's like all about making the voice like echo in these hollow spaces, right, and filling these caverns and chambers and mines with nothing but sound and vibration, as you put it, Jose. That it doesn't convey any information. It just is beautiful music, and that's what the dwarves sing in the mines. Oh, I like that. Cool. The naming of the dwarf is chanted, right? But like they have this music, like wordless mining choirs, or mining choirs that sing wordless songs. Wordless songs in the caverns to celebrate the like acoustics of No, right? Like these great hollow spaces. How do you spell acoustics? Acoustics of No. That echo and vibrate. Echo and vibrate. That should be all caps. No. And celebrate the natural resonances. Oh, let me scoot that down. Of the earth. Yeah, I think vibrations is really cool. Like maybe they find valuable minerals down there. Yeah, and reciting a lineage. They'd pick different pitches and timbers when they reverberate back. That's cool. Is that how they... And what's cool too, yeah, I definitely have the picks going in there. But that, like, what I love to do is I love to take, like, silly or, like, played out tropes that have to do with dwarves
and like incorporate them and make them really vital. So like, what is this if not hi ho, right? This is just hi ho, it's off to work we go. It's like a mining song, but making it like deeply important to the culture and cool and not dorky anymore. Like there are 7 dwarf lords. There's 7 dwarf lords in Tolkien. There's 7 dwarven clans because there's 7 dwarves. You know what I mean? Like I actually really enjoy recontextualizing some of those like core dwarven principles, core like fantasy tropes, and making them really important in the culture. How they locate certain minerals. They sing at various frequencies, and that resonates off the different metals. And that's one thing I want to talk about too. I think that they have a lot of, they're into crystals for sure. They're way into crystals. And it's like all good energy crystals, you know? Sorry, if anyone is into crystals, I don't want to mock you, but I want to mock you a little bit. That's cool. So I think that, we got to talk about the other stuff. So she has names. This is all beside the point. Let's go. Names. Mother of Loads is definitely one of them. I really like Mother of Loads. Portfolio. Thanks for coming out, everybody. I was worried when we got started that like nobody would be here. The 7 Tenets of No. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. Oh yeah, that's true. That they have like different voices. So like the female dwarves are baritones, and then the male dwarves are bass. They're different tones, but they're all still below, right? They're all there's no sopranos in dwarven culture. It's all baritones and bass. That's cool. Like a baritone is considered like a high tenor. Yeah, 7 musical notes in a scale. Yep, there you go. See, I don't know. I just think that stuff's cool. That makes me happy. Their portfolio is earth, stone, gems, metal, iron, mining, tremors and vibrations, motherhood, forethought, right? Like insight, etc. Crystals, yep, crystals, definitely. Like anything that comes from the earth. Sorry. Childbirth. No one wants to hear me horribly sing. Now I'm just thinking about dwarven mining choirs. Intuition is good. Yep. And intuition, I think, like in instinct and gut, I think it can be interpreted as like the divine inspiration of no, right? Like what you feel in your heart you should do is sort of being true to yourself. That's believed to be no working through you, right? That's no sending you messages. It's the earth. Because you're made of earth, or so the dwarves believe. Cool. What else? Prayers and rituals. Definitely mining is the big one. Oh, shit. Let's do this. This is just such a messy document. I'm like excited now to go in. Prayers and rituals. Shit. Prayers and rituals. Rituox. Prayers and rituals, and then myths. Oh, symbols and myths. Symbols, myths. Like obviously stones and boulders and things for symbols. Stones, boulders, mountains, caves, crystals, mining gear, picks and shovels and whatnot. The anvil. Yep, that's the big one. You're right. The anvil. And we made the whole point about like the sexual undertones of whatchamacallit, I can't talk. Bor being the hammer, and the father is the hammer, and the mother is the anvil, right? The blade and I forget what that's called, like valley. Mining is more about building supports and planning than just simple digging. That's true. Makes the anvil sing. So it knows praising. Yep. Definitely. I think it's a lot about like respecting the earth. Like that's a big thing, right? That like respect for the earth, like a cave-in is seen as like a punishment. You didn't respect the earth. Respect the earth doesn't respect you, right? That like an earthquake or a volcanic explosion or an eruption or a schist or whatever is seen as a rebuke, right? A bad omen from No, that you are unworthy, worthy of her might and gifts. So, like, it's as much about treating the earth with respect, making the anvil sing, hey-o. That's definitely a dwarven sexual euphemism. Sing that anvil. Yeah, I like that. Respect for the earth. A cave-in is seen as punishment. I think that's the same. Singing in the mine. To honor her. Also to help find metal. And it kind of goes into respect for the earth, but like not delving too deeply and like understanding and like, you know, not being greedy, right? That these are all gifts that the earth has given you, and that you need to please continue to think of dwarven pickup lines. Yeah, I feel like they're weird about sex. We talked about this a little bit. I had some insights into what I wanted to do with the motherhood stuff, especially with like same-sex couples, which we can get into in a little bit. I guess that's kind of here in Prayers and Rituals. Let's talk about it. So we talked about the idea of dwarven childbirth, and you know, do dwarves just make other dwarves out of metal, which is cool, but not great in a politics game where you want to have a lot of it be about bloodlines and lineages and sex and politics and whatever. It's kind of tough if you get sort of impersonal like that. But you also still want to allow for same-sex couples and things like that. So I had an idea, and I think what we're going to do here is we're going to say that same-sex couples can appeal to priests and priestesses of the Mother of Lodes, and they will act as sacred surrogates. You know, the implication being that all couples deserve the blessing of childbirth, and there's a tacit understanding that there's a tendency, maybe we'll say, tendency among those born from the church that they will go into the church when they grow old. Not always, right? But that like they're sort of considered to be blessed by the gods because they were like they were quickened in the womb of a priestess, blessed by the gods, quickened in the womb of a priestess. No, that's I think what we're gonna do. Cooking mushrooms. Mushrooms could be, yeah. That's a whole different thing we're going to talk about at some point. It's like dwarven economy and like what do they eat and what's their diet. But I think mushrooms could be considered a holy thing for No too. I like that. They're like the bounty. Okay, this is probably dumb. I like the idea that there are some rocks that dwarves eat. That like there are some like species of rock, or there's like a classification of rock that if like properly prepared, dwarves can eat. Like a rock biter from Neverending Story. That's maybe kind of stupid, but I sort of like the idea. And there's not very many, and it's like some, you know, limestone or whatever. But that there's some varieties of rock that can be prepared, and it's like part of dwarven cuisine is to eat rock. Rock candy, yeah. We all know Smiths make terrible fathers. Yeah, sure. Follow the path of No. Salt is definitely a big thing. Oh, small salt mining is cool. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of different options of like things they can, you know, whether it's mushrooms or my fiance had a good point. I was trying to think about like clothing, like where would they get their clothes? You know, like obviously they could trade for it. You could do some stuff with hair potentially because they have so much hair. But I also like the notion, or she had the idea of worms, silkworms. So like I feel like silk is like a big thing to dwarves, but they don't see it as being very valuable. It was like one of the things they traded a lot with humans. Like, oh, we have all this silk, but it's like the main way we make our clothes because we have these worms. And humans like, give me the silk, it's great, right? Like silk is a huge deal to humans, but not really to dwarves. Activated charcoal smoothies. Yeah, I don't know. I just think the idea of like, I can see like non-dwarven characters getting invited to a dwarven feast, and like, you know, like the Indiana Jones scene, the super racist one in Temple of Doom where they take the lid off and there's monkey brains. Like I just like the idea of like rocks. You can eat these, right? Why don't you have some delicious rocks? Like, I think that's kind of funny. Because charcoal is wood, right? Yeah, silkworms, exactly. Salt is really good. Yep. We can talk about all this later, but that's all good stuff. So what kind of myths do we have for her? Well, the main one, No created the earth and poured herself into it. She is the earth in a way that none of the other gods are. That none of the other. Oh, is there mineral coal? Coal, but not charcoal. Are those different? I don't know. I'm a huge moron when it comes to that kind of stuff. If I was gonna eat a rock, dude, I want dwarves to podcast other than rocks to see if they're dumb enough to eat them. That's kind of funny. You want to eat something igneous? Yeah, that's fair. Igneous rock, I hear, is the most delicious. I forget what the rock biter likes. I think he specifically likes limestone because it has that like twist of limestone. You know what I mean? And then the other gods are, but yeah, I like the idea of them serving rocks and watching people try to eat them and they just can't. But it's like a cultural thing. Like, what do you mean rocks? Or dwarves forgetting that humans can't eat rocks and being like, what the fuck? Again, not all rocks, just some. There's some varieties of rock that they can eat. Poured herself into it. She's the earth in a way the other goes not. She is the mother of all dwarves of all metals and gems and stone. Let's go up and take Boar's relationship bit. Boar and Noah work together to create the prison. Sorry, jumping around a lot, I know. And then there was another one. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been a much more productive day than I thought it was going to be. I was like really not feeling it about an hour ago, and I was like, oh, do I cancel the stream today? I just feel like crap. I'm not like mentally in the right place for it. But I think it's been very good to be here working on it with y'all. And we still got some time. There's no rush. No one's gonna come and kick me out today, thankfully. Because I'm in a new spot. Do you guys like all the notes behind me? I don't know what they're about. I think they're about political science or something like that. But they were here when I got here. I thought they would make a more interesting backdrop than just a blank wall. So, behold. It looks like these are like mad scribblings that I've done about Dwarven culture. Okay. Other no myths. Yep. Let's see, we got stuff. Being a misunderstanding, they use hot rocks to cook and they leave them in food. Oh, I see. You're saying that you like the notion they don't eat rocks, but that they people think that they might. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that they eat rocks, but maybe that's dumb. I don't know. I just thought it was neat and weird. And like I was trying to find ways to like make my races like a little bit unique, but still like on brand. So we'll see. It could go either way. Maybe they used to eat rocks a long time ago as a story, and now they can't anymore because of something, right? Maybe that's what I've sold is the ability to eat rocks. The test to separate the rocks from the food. Yeah, that's probably smarter. I don't know. I liked them eating rocks. What else do we need for no here? She has a relationship with Moot, kind of, but not really. She has a relationship with Oth. She's kind to Oth and understanding in the way that a mother is. Okay, so I don't think she really has much of a relationship with Hem, as we discussed. Hem, the god of thieves and trickery. She does have a relationship with Moot, but it's not a great one, and they don't really talk very much. They're sisters, but they don't speak, they don't see eye to eye, and there's a healthy respect. Moot's kind of tough to have a relationship with. So what is her relationship with this? Because we kind of already have her, like, she's kind to Oth because she knew that was necessary. Fine gravel caught in the mustache. Vaughn, to me, it was less about the dwarves being magical and more about the rocks being magical. There are some strains of rocks that can be prepared to be eaten. Definitely it's magic on some level because how would their teeth handle it, right? But maybe there's a way that they prepare them or that they cook them or do whatever that makes them more edible. I just thought that was an interesting idea because it's so out there and alien. But, you know, it could be a combination. It could be that they have, like... And I also think it's like a delicacy, right? It's like there's a rare species of rock that can be eaten. I don't think they're just going to just like pick up a boulder and crunch into it. I think it's like a master dwarven chef would have to prepare it for a certain amount of time. Maybe they would even use magic in the ritual, right? Like sort of transmute kind of a thing and turn it into like an edible rock. And eating earth is considered to be like the finest of delicacies is more what I mean. But like people talk about it in the way that like people talk about sushi being culturally a very Japanese thing. The eating raw fish is culturally Japanese, even though like they eat sushi is like a part of their diet for sure, but it's not like a controlling interest in their diet. It's considered like the cultural delicacy of dwarves is these certain kinds of rocks, just because it's really out there. Oh, they eat fossils? That's pretty cool. I kind of like that. I don't know where this goes, but like I'll put it up in here, miscellaneous. Fossils is a neat way to get around that, yeah. They eat like extinct animals, and that's the big shit. That's like the fancy stuff. Do dwarves eat rocks? Or better yet, do they eat fossils? That's funny. I like that a lot. Listen, Vaughn, it was cool to begin with. Get out of here. But I think fossils is better than stone. Vaughn is unimpressed with my rock-eating dwarves. But that's fine, different strokes. Nothing wrong with that. We can agree to disagree. But I think fossils is definitely stronger. I still think they might eat some rocks. We'll see. Okay. Let's see. So I'm trying to think, like, what is No's relationship to Vis? No is Vis's mother. How do you distinguish the relationship between her and Oth? Like, if Oth did sell something of some great value, it sort of puts a strain on their relationship. But again, I feel like No is so, like, incorporeal and omniscient that, like, she forgives all, in a certain sense. That, like, I feel like it's hard to cross a line. Maybe if the thing that Oth sold was, like, one of her secret names or something like that, like some access to the earth, I could see that having put a strain on their relationship. Yeah, how does she feel about Vis? I mean, she gets along presumably with Vis because everybody gets along with Vis except for maybe Oth, and that's what makes Oth unusual. But, yeah, Rockgator sounds like a slur. It could be. I mean, but I think it's, like, based on truth, right, in that case. Doesn't understand her mother. She still wants to have a relationship to her. She tries to sing to her. She went into a deep journey to hear her, but she couldn't. She fell asleep. Oh, that's kind of interesting. The baby kid. She definitely is the baby kid. I think that Vis and Oth were both made after, but I like the idea, of after the Discorporation. But I think that No is Vis's mother. Vis wants to be close to her, but never heard her speak. She undertook a great journey. Yeah, maybe. A great journey to hear her, but never quite opened her mind in the right way. Like, the myth talks about her being frightened by an earthquake. Oops, shit. The myth talks about her getting frightened by tremors and not realizing that was No speaking to her daughter. So the myth is about listening to the earth, right? The myth is about that the earth doesn't speak in the way that you want to, that you have to wait for the earth to talk to you, and you can't make demands on it, right? It's like about respecting the earth. The word for dwarf in Elvish translates directly as rock eater. That's kind of funny. Yeah, I like that. Because again, like the notion that like, they do it very infrequently, or they eat fossils, right? As you pointed out, Vaughn, maybe it's just like a misunderstanding of how they cook food, but it became to be a slur, right? It became something that defined them in a negative way. Yeah, I think that's good. I'm trying to think of other No stuff, because that feels like pretty good for her. She's really important to them, I think, obviously, but not in a way I think we've discussed all the aspects of it, or the relevant ones. We can always come back. Let's talk about Vis. So names, and then what is it? Portfolio. portfolio and symbols and prayers and rituals. I think I have it a little backwards, but that's fine. And then myths. So Vis, we should have all the myths already because, I mean, unless there's like unique ones that are just Vis related myths. But I think we've been, obviously since we've been through every other god, we know how they like interact. So rivalry with Oth. I'm just going to put all these in. Oh, check out the chat. Yeah, loads of fun. Ain't no party like a Vis dwarf party because a Vis dwarf party don't stop. You're exactly right. She's the cool one. Everybody likes to hang out with Vis. I think there is kind of a sense of like, oh God, who am I thinking of? Who's the actor? Belushi-esque, John Belushi. Belushi-esque, like, you know, partier, like, there's somewhat irresponsible, but, like, that they overdrink. Moot doesn't really have a relationship with Vis, because Moot doesn't speak. Him and Vis get along. I think what's cool, and this is stupid, like, obviously because you guys have been paying attention, and so of course you will, but, like, the way we're talking about it now, like, everyone is like, yeah, Dionysus, like, definitely. It's basically the Bacchus character. But I think Dwarven relationship to alcohol is different enough that we should still discuss, like, what the rituals and things are like, because I don't think that she necessarily is just, like, a lech. But I do think there's kind of, like, a loving, like, oh, Vis, you and your booze, right? Trixie eater, never eat with a dwarf. Yeah, who knows? And then boar. Okay. The daughter is gonna be something like, you know, mug emptier or mug drinker or whatever. Portfolio is drinking. I think like brawling. Drinking, brawling, but memory and history as well. Storytelling. Oh, history. Storytelling. It's charisma, right? Storytelling, wrestling. Yeah, exactly. Bluster. Oh, she's like the god of like, she's the humanities department. Bluster and boasting. Right, like sort of the braggadocious element to dwarves, and like listing off all their deeds and like just sort of the god of glory, you know? And, like, I feel like dwarves, especially, like, sort of Boreite or Borean dwarves who are all focused on their works, have a tendency to, like, forget their own achievements. And I feel like this is the dwarf, is the god that, like, reminds them of that. Like, look at all the things you've done and, like, be proud of yourself. Kind of like the self-care god, almost. Could be poetry. I could see that. Doesn't really feel like a speaker, but it's kind of in storytelling. I can put that in storytelling and poetry. I don't think she's just formal, right? But yeah, I think every once in a while she has that like, oh, polishing is kind of interesting, making it look good. Polishing. Almost like exaggerating. Beauty. Yeah, that's cool. Tankards. Just tankards. I'm trying to think of like other symbols, but I feel like it's like the tankard and barrels and kegs. Drunken jury, that's funny. We could talk about that. Friendship, bonds, maybe marriages too on some level, right? Like that's probably the god that does the big feast and the wakes and things. Oh yes, this is the other one. She's the god of death. The quenching tub. Yeah, that's cool. She's the god of death because she is the god of remembering, right? And she's the god of wakes and sending people off and like remembering them and making sure that they're immortalized. I like the idea that the dwarven, the gods of death like jump around, that it's not like, okay, it's always wisdom, which like seems like the obvious one. The different races would have different relationships to death. So for the elves, it's constitution. its constitution. It's the god of time and the god of sort of mortality and immortality. For dwarves, it's the god of drinking and memory and feasting and merrymaking. So she's definitely the god of death. And I think that's that cool, like, that's the dwarven attitude to death. It's almost like the Irish attitude to death, that like you get just smashed, right? That's kind of cool. For Boar, she made anvil music. For Moot, she made alcohol. Yeah, I mean, they might think of it as passing away, right? But that's the funeral rites are all done in her name, right? In memory. How would this perform with each other god? For Boar, she made anvil music. For Moot, she made alcohol. Working songs and anvil music, I definitely get. Yeah, for sure, Alan. Definitely the Irish made working songs. So barrels and kegs. I don't want to put like coffins. We have to talk about like what dwarves do with their dead. I mean, they feel like they bury them, right? Like they inter them in the earth. But prayers and rituals. What art would she create for each other god? Getting drunk. I'm not sure that she's like a huge creator, but she could, because I feel like that's what Boar does, right? Boar's the creator. I feel like she's an enabler. You know, I feel like she helps. I guess art, right? Like, what do you define as art? She helps other people do their thing. You know. So I think for Moot, which we don't have on here. Yeah, she is the muse. I can see that. I think some of that is in Boar 2, right? That he's all about like the inspiration and stuff. Tells stories to Moot about ancient victories. Oh yeah, no, maybe you're right, Vaughn. Maybe she provides booze, right? To Moot, like. Oh, she's also definitely the god of brewing. Right, we have drinking, but brewing is a big thing, for sure. Provides booze to Moot to help Moot relive ancient battles. And better her strategies. How come? Jose, how come a candle? Strategies. I could see them cremating, but I feel like cremating is weird underground. At some point, have to be snuffed out. It could be. Yeah, I'll put a candle on there for now. I'm curious as to what they would think of that, right? Like candles, because fire is like fleeting. The forge's fire, I guess. Like, but that's the thing, is the forge's fire is never supposed to go out, right? Like that's supposed to always remain. So she provides booze to Moot. She might light the forges, but that still feels like Boar to me. They return to no, they cremate back to no. But I feel like if they return to no, then they're buried. You know, if they burn, they just turn into ash, and that goes up. That goes to the sky. I feel like they're dwarves. You know, they would want to be remembered and interred forever. If they're burnt, then they're gone. Let's see. What did she give to Vis? How did she enable him? Vis gave him company. Company and friendship. Sure, yeah. I mean, well, I'm not opposed to it. It doesn't leap out for me as a super Vis thing, but it could be. Yeah, it gave him company and friendship. Vis gave Boar inspiration. Vis gave him company and friendship. Booze. What about Oth? I mean, that could be the one that they didn't get along, right? Like that's the one person that she doesn't see eye to eye with, right? Is her sibling. He's the god of wealth and commerce and trade. She's the god of drinking. And we talked a little bit about like the forgetting, and that kind of ties into Vis with the booze, right? Matchmaker. Vis introduces him to... Oh, that's kind of interesting. Maybe there's a myth about Vis trying to set up... We don't have a matchmaker patron, actually. I think that might be no, because she's the mother. But I don't know. It could be Vis. Yeah, Vis is like the friend maker. Matchmaking. Vis is a threat to Oth. Yeah, I think that there's no... That's the one... I think you're right. I think that it's stronger if Vis is like given something to all the gods except for Oth. Vis is a threat to Oth. Did Vis give something? Gave something, but Oth rejected it? Or sold it? Considered callous. That like there was an attempt for Vis to reach out, but Oth like rejected it. Getting drunk, remembering the fallen. Yeah, I like that. Vis doesn't trust Oth because she's... Vis wrote a song that got stuck in Oth's head. That's kind of funny. Because she's worried he'll sell it. Vis wrote an earworm. These are all good. That got stuck in Oth's head. And he's never forgiven her. That's really funny. Remembering the fallen as a ritual, getting drunk, telling stories, making matches, arranging marriages, bragging, all jigs. Yeah, it could be. Bragging about one's accomplishments. I'm trying to think, like, what are they, like... How do they, like, these are all, like, things you could do, the individual activities, like, what kinds of, like, services and rituals and things do they have? Do they, like, have nightly drinking? Like, what is the other feast days to Vis? You know, it seems like Vis is involved on some level, at some level, the intermediary, could be some level with every feast or holy day. That like they all have booze. Vis sneaks in there whenever anybody celebrates anything. Names intermediary. Yeah, it could be Alan, but she's kind of all about history and, like, permanence. Although there is the notion of, like, if you get drunk, that fades, you know? Woodworking, to me, would almost seem to be more Hem than Vis. But I could see it. Also, Feast or Holy Day. Woodworking. Yeah, that's cool, dude. Impermanent. How do you spell impermanence? Permanence. Favored deity of the children. Dude, what is the... There's something about, like, the bridge? Bridge builder? That, like, she reaches out, right? She makes connections. She's the matchmaker. What is the drinking age for dwarves? Can kids drink? You know? Like, what is a dwarven sweet? Is it booze? Does it have alcohol in it? I feel like that's an interesting idea, too. You know, favorite deity of the children, like akin to Santa Claus. To Santa Claus. Is believed to visit gifts and fortune upon good little children. Like, mythologically, she's thought as being the good son. She's the good daughter. The good daughter, good children get rewarded by her. Right? That seems strong. I like that, Jose. Yeah, that's cool. Cider. I like that. They don't have as many memories, it doesn't capture them as much. That, like, the older you get, the more you can, like, fall into the thrall of alcohol. That's beautiful, Vaughn. Nice work. They can drink, and, you know, it's kind of fun. But, yeah, you're right. They don't have as much to fall back on. That's really cool. I'm going to put this as a footnote. Children can drink at any age, but it has little effect on them since they have fewer memories. Cool. That feels pretty good for her. She has no feast days or any holidays. I mean, we can talk about it, but like right now I like the idea that she's just like in all of the holidays and the feast days. I don't know if the gods have those. Maybe that's more historical. Well, we can talk about it. Okay, cool. So it's about 7 o'clock right now. When they pooped and cried. Yeah, that's all I remember. I like the idea of giving, like, fucking booze to a baby. And then they'd like, oh, I remember when I screamed. What a scream that was. Let's see. It's about 7 o'clock right now. I at least want to go for another half an hour, if not a little longer. If y'all are still good to hang out. I kind of want to talk at least a little bit about language. So we talked about the difference between written language and... versus spoken language. The spoken language obviously came first. Spoken came first. Most dwarves depicted everything with hieroglyphs or pictographs, elaborate carvings in some cases, and didn't see the need for written word. I don't take a sec. We did all the gods. We need to like flesh them out a little bit more, but that's pretty good, I feel like. Oh, see you, Vaughn. Thanks for hanging. How do you guys feel? Is anybody gonna stick around for a little bit, or are you guys taking off? Because if we're taking off, we can adjourn for tonight. We did do all the gods, and it was a lot of work. But I still got maybe another half an hour of world building in me if y'all want to stick around. Let me know. I can go either way because I think I'd like to try to maybe start even thinking about some names because I'm worried I'm getting too sold on these. Cool. Getting too sold on these placeholders. So let's maybe just talk about language for a little bit. Didn't see the need for the written word. I think that the spoken language is really stiff and inflexible. In a previous world, in my 4th edition campaign, Dwarven had way fewer letters, and so it was harder to form certain sounds, or impossible to form certain sounds in Dwarven. Specifically, they didn't have the vowel I, so they had A, E, O, U, and then Y sometimes, but they didn't have I because I felt like kind of a thin, sort of reedy sound that I didn't feel like it was there in Dwarven. I don't think we can do that here because we do have to have VIS, so we probably still need to have I. We could take out another one, but I'm worried about vowels. But I like the notion of that like the language is stiff and it's inflexible and it can't really bend. It's not very interpretive. It almost has more of a romance language kind of a vibe, you know? Hieroglyphs. It's more of a romance language kind of a vibe, where it's like halting and sort of mechanical and not very elegant. The written language, a meter constraint. That's interesting. How do you mean, Alan? Written language. Don't use an I, just a combo of other language. Don't use a language, just a combo of other languages. Written language would be all runic, invented much later, probably bastardized from human script, or Elven or Orcish. Those are the other big powers. I like the idea that it was like a big prompt. So on Dune history, there was these three sort of sister empires: the elves, the orcs, and the yeah. Like, to be considered well spoken, you've got to speak in a certain trochaic or iambic form. It'd be a nightmare to play a dwarf that way. Yeah, that's true. I think maybe if you're speaking Dwarven, you know, it could be. It's kind of interesting though. Oh, I see. Combo of other vowels. We could, but the problem is, again, we have this. Like, this is the problem, is that all of the gods have to contain the little phonemes. And so you could do like VYYS, but I feel like that's not as cool as just that. And like I does exist in some, like Gimli has two I's in it, right? And that still sounds very Dwarven. So I think we can still use the I. It's just a matter of like what kinds of sounds are we making. Yeah, it could be like a formalized language, Alan. That's a good point. Does it have meter constraint? I could also see weird grammar. I could see, if you guys have ever looked at Klingon, I forget exactly how. I think we talked about the notion of them having Low Dwarven and High Dwarven. That High Dwarven or Old Dwarven or First Dwarven or whatever you want to call it, like, can't be written down. Oh yeah, that's cool. I think we did take out the P in my Mooncrash one, or my 4th edition game. That's cool. I think the P was removed just because it didn't sound very Dwarven. I couldn't come up with Dwarven. The letters that don't carry sound. P. Do we have any P's in the god names? I don't think so. Bor, Hem, Mut, Oth, No, Vis. No, so we could take out P. I like the idea of limiting it, but Klingon in particular has like really weird grammar, where it's like verb, object, direct object. It's like really, really strange, and it's intentionally meant to be like difficult to speak. So I could see there being some of that too. Oh, sorry, Alan. We were talking about two different languages. High Dwarven, High/Old Dwarven is secret. First of all, only spoken by dwarves. Is considered. Oh yeah, I had this cool idea for the names. So in a lot of fantasy settings, the dwarves tend to have like the compound last names. So like in FR, it's a lot of like Battlehammer and Boulder Shoulder and like weird things like that that are kind of a little cutesy. But I still liked some of those. This again feels very Dwarven. Yeah, Old Dwarven is definitely never spoken in mixed company, but the conceit being that they have surnames that are Dwarven words. So like if it's Battlehammer, one of the main Dwarven characters in the campaign is named Harada Hornwinder. But Hornwinder is sort of like the common name that she uses because it's considered like profane for a non-dwarf to speak her old dwarven name, and it's considered to be like yeah, there you go, Jose, with this Klingon. It's considered to be secret, right? And that maybe even people outside of the clan aren't supposed to know what the name is, so they go by these like by names. That way, other people, especially like humans and non-dwarves, can communicate with them. You probably might know it. I mean, if you speak Old Dwarven, you would be able to translate it as, Burak Shol or whatever. But it's considered like really rude to use it, to refer to them as that. Maybe if you're a dwarf, you can do it. Especially if you're a dwarf of the clan, you can do it. But if you are not, if you're an outsider, that's like a grave insult, right? It's frequently spoken by dwarves. Most dwarves carry sort of surface names, which I like that too, because the conceit is that like it's a surface name. It's like a crude translation of my like deep meaningful name. Usually compounds for ease of use by humans, and it's considered a grave insult for a non-dwarf to use a true name or a deep name. A deep name and service name is pretty cool. Yeah, exactly. To call a dwarf by. To use a deep name. But yeah, whenever they're like out, sort of as you said, Alan, in mixed company. For their next show. Yeah, is their screen name. Definitely. You got it, buddy. They're all required to have numbers at the end of them. So she's actually Harada Hornwinder 69. That's her actual name. How do we feel about that? You like that? 6969 maybe. Get some double 69s in there. Cool, Harada Hornwinder. As an example. But then she has some actual last name. So Harada definitely exists. That's like the only Dwarven. It's very bold. So what Dwarven words do we know already that we've established in the world? Known words. We have Harada. It's a female name. And we have Kum, which is the name of the kingdom. Beware the sound of the F sharp. Silly. Translating to others is kind of fun. Kum is the kingdom name. So with Elven on Dune, oh yeah, I want to make this point too. On Dune is a Dwarven word. World name. So I really like the carrot, as you can tell. I think the carrot, if that's what that's actually called, specifically over the U, I think looks neat. But I think so with Elven, on Dune, they do a lot of. I try to have some linguistic touchstones that like maybe a real language wouldn't work this way because it's too limiting. But specifically with like Elven names, I always try to have two different. The word hat. I always try to have two different vowels, like two distinct vowels next to each other in all of my Elven names. So Vaer is an Elven word. Quethrolos is an Elven name. Symbia is an Elven name. Sion is an Elven name. Maurus is an Elven name. Nimria. I think that adds. I was looking at a lot of Tolkien's names, and that adds this kind of like flowing, like water-like Vaer, Quethrolos, Symbia, Sion. But yeah, I think as Jose is alluding to, I think a Dwarven conceit, and it's not everywhere. I don't think, not in the way that the Elven names are. But is to put the carrots and the umlauts and stuff in words to give it a different sound. I'm not super versed in what those are, but I like that as the notion of people in common trying to replicate these like harsh, guttural, sort of granite, grinding against granite kind of sounds that they don't translate well into common, and so they've had to invent little affectations to go on the tops of some of these Dwarven letters, right? But yeah, those are some examples of Elven names. But I want to look up what those things are called now. There's a bunch of different names for them. Sorry guys, one sec. Carrot is one. If anybody knows them, like umlaut is another. Dwarven. Lots of weird symbol, like tilde over certain letters, certain vowels. So things like carrot and I don't know how to spell it, umlaut. Things like that. Pretty sure it was called a carrot. I could be wrong. Is it carrot with an E? Yes, it's a carrot. Not a carrot like a carrot, like gold. I don't know about a tilde. That seems kind of weird because it feels more Spanish to me. Maybe in the right places it could be cool. Grapheme, I think, is the term. I'm looking it up on Wikipedia. Is the smallest unit of measurement in a writing system of any given language. Glyphs. Okay, maybe that's not quite right. But you understand what I'm saying, right? Like that could be like a hallmark of Dwarven language. Sometimes, oh yeah, thank you, Alan. You were right. The word hat, yeah. Cute names out of the sound of things in the surface. So maybe bark grinder would be like the sound of the name is, or the outer name is not related to the concepts, but the sound. Kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, here we go. We have bullets, carrots. We got a list. Tilde is like the NEA thing, right? The little squiggle. It's a tie. It's an example of a tie. Sorry, this is probably not very exciting. Oh, that's kind of cool. That might be sort of fun. That's like the dome over two different words. I don't know how you would use it. I don't want to get too crazy. But that's an idea. I think something to make it look sort of dwarven. But yeah, like what kinds of sounds are we talking about here? I think it's a lot of harsh vowels. NEA is done in Italian too. It's also in Spanish. I mean, that's kind of where it's most famously known. With GN is how it's done in Italian. So let's see. Let's just make a category for sounds. Sounds. Harsh, guttural, unpleasant, difficult to speak, rigid. I was even just trying to think of like good like phenomes, like things to go off of, like vosh and vosh, like orok, kark. Like it's tough too because like how much do you like? I feel like a lot of Dwarven gets some run over with Orcish, with having that kind of like guttural rah. Like one of the orcs we have established in Yogg is named Throka, which like could conceivably be a Dwarven name, right? That doesn't look that undwarven to me. Noki, yeah. So I don't know, do I just like make up a bunch of different weird sounds and then like try to make them feel dwarven? Like what is the next step here? Only spoken by dwarves. When I do, let's talk about the god names maybe. So when I talk about god names, let's just keep it down here. That seems easier. So the ones I already have, I have elven god names. We have Iboriel is boar. Otham is hem. We have Damoth is moot. We have Arenath is oth. We have Norion is no. And we have Visemria is this. So I try to kind of spread it out. You can see like Iboriel and Damoth have the god name inside the word. Otham and Arenath have it at the end, and Norion and Visemria have it at the beginning. So similarly with the Dwarven gods, you kind of want to do the same thing. So you want to have two of them that start, two in middle, two at end. Just to have, that's the way they're not all at the end and they're not all at the beginning, they're not all in the middle. You would plagiarize Loder's language for the Rohirrim. Yeah, Finnish is kind of interesting. Norwegian, I think, gets too finicky in terms of, like, it sounds kind of like, it's a lot of harsh fricatives, which I don't necessarily think is true of Dwarven. I think Dwarven is deeper and more resonant in a way that I don't know is necessarily replicated in an Earth language that I'm familiar with. So let's start with Boar. The obvious one here with Boar, it would be to do, like, Boradin, because Moradin is a god. I think is it traditionally an elfin god? I think that's kind of cool, but I also worry that it's like too similar. So there's Boar, there's Hem, there's Moot, there's Oth, there's No, and there's Vis. Maybe this is not a great stream activity because I'm worried about just sitting here making sounds and having the two of you weigh in on it. But so Iboriel has it in the middle, so I'd be tempted to either put it in the beginning or the end. I think at the end, something like Talbor or Tambor. Jeffrey Tambor is the name of my Dwarven god. You know what? Yeah, I think we're going to maybe wait on this. But yeah, we could throw some stuff out. Umbor is kind of interesting. If you guys want to throw some ideas out, that's really cool. I had the fright of dwarves sounding like Australians out of the flowing and sounding vowels. Yeah, Australians, dwarves. Talking about boar and him and moot and ath and now and vis. There's actually a little bit New Zealand. Vis is a very Kiwi. Big boar man. One of the most fun things I had with the halfling gods is coming up with So the halfling gods are saints, but they are all based on earth names. So it's like Saint, you know, there's different ones based on different human names. Shechem is interesting. Sounds very Hebrew. But so it was like taking real earth names that sounded kind of halflingy and putting in the god names. So like Saint Hamish is one of them, right? Like Hamish. And my favorite one is one of the halfling gods, one of the halfling saints of strength. One of the boar saints is the saint of loyalty, who is a dog. Oh, is it? That makes sense. Who's a dog. Halflings revere dogs. And so, of course, what is the name of that saint? It's Saint Bernard. Which was just perfect, right? It was one of those beautiful, like, dogs are strength-based, and it's loyalty, and I needed a name, and there is a breed of dog called the Saint Bernard, and it was just like this perfect, oh, it worked great. And that one really tickled me. I kind of do like Umbor, though. Yeah, there's a dog saint, yep. Umbor is kind of interesting. Hem, Mut, Oth, Novis, Shechem. He puts it at the end, which is cool. Umbor. Is that a thing? Why do I feel like that's a thing? Umbor. It might be like a Star Wars race. Not that that would like stop me, but it's in Old English, I guess. No, I think Umbor is cool. Hem. Umber is a color. It means like darkness or shadow, right? Hemdall is kind of cool. It is very Nordic. I worry people would think it was a Heimdall, but it's cool. Yeah, Umber is the Great John Umber. But Umbor, I think, is good enough. I think one of the things that really... Chris Perkins does this all the time, but one of the best ways to name was Brown. One of the best ways to name fantasy locations and people is to take a word that we already know and just change a letter. Because a lot of times it will resonate with you, but you won't necessarily recognize why that resonates with you. So I actually don't think there's any problem with changing something small like Umber into Umbor, because like it's as though Umber already exists in your brain and you're just changing it a tiny bit. Coming up with something like totally out of whole cloth a lot of times kind of like clangs off your ear. It doesn't sound quite right. Hemdall is cool. I kind of like that. I feel like it's very similar to Heimdall, and I'm worried about people making that comparison. But it does feel very Dwarven. Entertain this idea for a second. Umbor? Or Umbor? I think Umbor is stronger than Umbor. Let's look at Hemdall. What would it be if we put the carrots over that A, or the umlaut over the A? I don't know. Hemdall. What is that? How does that sound? I'm trying to like figure it out. Is it you? Yeah. Sound. An umlaut. Does anybody here speak German? I don't. So I think it might be better without it. I'm worried it's gonna screw up the... It's I. Like A. Himdall. Well, it's gotta be Hem. It's gotta be H-E-M. Shechem thing comes from another Bible story, but it's about lying and tricking. The Shechemites. Yeah. I wouldn't put a hyphen in it. I would probably just do Shechem if I did it, but I'm worried to do something that's like straight out of the Bible. It's cool. Shek could maybe be like Shekmut or Mutchek is kind of interesting. Hemdall, I think it's like Hemdial, I think is what that ends up being if you put the two A's over it, is what I'm seeing. Hemdial, Hemdall, Hemdan, Hemdath. It's got oth in it. Hemdar, Hemeth. Hemeth. That's too flowy, right? Umbor. I was like Umbor. Umbor is maybe better. Maybe with the carrot it is better. Mutter. Oh, so it'd be Hemdol. Could you just do Hemdol? Hemdel. Mutter. It's kind of interesting. Very Nordic. Hemdul. Hemdul is kind of cool because it almost sounds like Heimdall, but it's different. And you could put the dual here. Hemdul.
Mutter. I kind of wanted to have a few more letters that feels like it's just moot with an R on the end of it. Yeah, mutter, right? Mutter. Mutter. And yeah, you don't want it to sound like mother. Hoth. Umbor. Hemdul. I think Hemdal is better than Hemdul. Hemdul. Even just that's maybe better. Umbor, Hemdul, Hoth, Athar, Athad. Athad has kind of a cool tone. Yeah. Athad. Because I think there's something like boom, like these being like short, like clipped 2 hits rather than like, I guess Mutter is 2. Umbor, Hemdul, Mut, Hemdal. I think Hemdal's right, dude. I think you had it. Bathar al Athad. Yeah, it's just someone saying Bashar al Assad with a fucking lisp. Bathar al Athad. Athad. I think Athad is cool. So let's see, what do we have? So we have Oth at the beginning and we have Hem at the beginning. So then 2 of these have got to be in the middle and one of them has to be at the end. I feel like Vis is in the middle because it's a very like unusual. I feel like there's not a Dwarven, you know, like Clovis doesn't feel very Dwarven to me. So I think Vis is in the middle somehow. That might be kind of hard to do. Like Visol, Hemdal, Athad, Umbor, Hemdal. That's no. I think Mutter is interesting. Like, I don't mind the idea of... Is it like Omutter? Omut is the end. Visul. Lungo. Visul is kind of interesting. Hungo. Yeah, no is really tough. Again, Easter egg. Right? Agdama. Visul is kind of cool. But I don't think we can do that because we have Oth and Hem other places. We can move them around. Hem could go somewhere else, but I want to try to keep it spread around. Not Nosir. Nosir isn't bad. But again, starting at the beginning. Visul, yeah, sounds Brotas. That's funny. Could no go at the end? Could you do like Vogno? Vogno sounds a little Jew-Germany. Like it sounds like Wagner, right? Vogno. Wagno. Zogno? Too alien. I think it's... Yeah, these are tough. Let's get rid of Omut. I do like O. I think O is a good Dwarven. Oh no. Oh no. Yeah. Ogno. Ognod. Because we have Athad, but Ognor. Gon would break the phenom. Yeah, Gon would break the phenom thing. Ogno. Gon. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, there's even a joke there too that like the wisdom god is named No, right? That it knows things. Muthra? Muthra's kind of interesting. Again, it starts at the beginning. Ramut. Ramut is kind of cool, but it puts it at the end. Ramut. Sounds very Egyptian. So we have 2 at the end, right? Ramut. So Umbor, Hemdal, Ramut, Athad, Ogno, and then that means Vis has to be in the middle. Knock. Ognok. Ognok's a little alien sounding. Ognoth. Ognoth. I'm just looking at all the Ognoz. Ognob. Ognob. Ognon? Ognon's kind of cool. Avisul. Yeah, that's not bad. Ooh. How do you feel about Ognon? I guess Athod and Ognon sound kind of similar. Ognosh. 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 Hovis. It's at the end. You could do like Hovish. Umbor. We got that H. Clovish, Povish. We didn't want to do Zovish. Yovish. Ognon. Ognod. Ognoff. Ognog. 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 We don't have to do an O here. I mean, we could do Ovish. Doesn't sound very like, let's get drunk and pray to Ovish. I do like O. I think O would be a good one to start one of these. Ognep. Then we need the O. Oglovish. Ognol. Ognol. We have him, doll, but yeah. I mean, guys, I'm so picky. Please understand. Ognol. Ognem. No, it's too long. Oviska. Oviska's not bad. Ovist. Ovisa. Ovis. Thanks for sitting here with me, guys. I'm sorry to be so picky. Ovis is good. Vist. Ovis. Oviso. Because you kind of want to Umbor, Hemdal, Ramut, Athad, Noep. No. It's got to be in the middle, right? That's the problem. Yeah, I got to go soon. I got to go pretty soon, too. Oh, these are so good. Umbor, Hemdal, Ramut, Athad, Noep, Noten. But it can't be in the middle. So, like, Ogno, I think, is good. Ogno. Onot. Noctis. Noctis is cool. But again, it's in the middle. Onot. Something kind of cool about Onot. And then Vis would have to change because you want that. Oh, Onot? What do we think? I guess it kind of ends like Ramut. Umbor, Hemdal, Ramut, Athad, Onot. Onot. Yeah, Noctus. Tus is cool though. Vis, Tus. Tum. Um is kind of cool. Ognom. Ognot. Ognod. Ognot. I think the OGNO. Davish? Davish is kind of cool. Davish. That's pretty close. Ogno. Yeah, right. Davish. Davish. Is there like a Davli? Davli is kind of interesting. I'm trying to think like Gimli. Glowing. Knowing. We can move some of these around too, right? Like we could move Athad to something else, like Gimli, Thorin, Dav. Oh no, it can't be Davli because it needs the Vish. Davish. Yeah, Davish isn't too bad. Doesn't quite sound It doesn't quite sound like stony enough. I think it's the closest, and it starts with a new letter too. Ognok, Dervish, right? That's cool for something else. That's really cool. Darvish, Darvis, Clovis. Vis I knew was going to be the hard one. It's the one that sounds the least Dwarven for sure. Hemdal, Ramut, Athad, Ognot, Dalvish, Devilish, Ognot, Ognov. Oh, shit. Ognov is very Russian. Ognov. I feel like the Earth has to have this like deep, rich, profound name. And none of these are working for me. It's like cool stuff, yeah. So I think the ones I'm the least happy with are these last two. I think these four work, if we want to call it. Because I know you guys got to run. Ognov. Thanks for coming and hanging and doing some of this work with me, you guys. I'm going to highlight these. I'm going to think about them over the week. And then maybe we can talk about it. in future. Oh, so yeah, I'll talk about it more on Twitter. But next week, I want to talk to you, Alan, and see if you're around because I would love to do Ernst coming up here. Oh, nope, that's not what I want. Yeah, no worries. Let's talk tomorrow maybe and see if you would be down to do Ernst next week. Honor. Ognor is Ognor. Ognor is kind of interesting. It sounds a little bit like Trogdor. Ognor. Yeah, something like that. That's cool. I don't know if I do 2 R's, but I like that roll. Umbor. It's a little similar to Ognor, I guess. But maybe that's good. Okay, cool. We'll talk more next week. Thanks, everybody. I think we did a lot of great work today. Yeah, see you next time. Thanks for chatting, everybody. Jose, this week I promise I will listen to the Kalevala, and we will talk about it next time. Great. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, happy adventuring.